So a friend from out of town reaches out and says, hey, I'm in town for about 2 weeks. Can you take a look at my grandma's computer? Absolutely. What's wrong with it? He says that it doesn't turn on and she doesn't get a display. I said, all right, cool. Drop it off at the garage. Let's take a look at it. So I haven't even opened it up yet. And I figured I'd take you guys through the process of what I do when I get these types of computers, things to do, how to protect yourself, and a couple of things to note. We'll see what kind of specs we have, and then we'll play with it for a little bit. So one thing that I always recommend doing, visual inspections, because looking at the computer will tell you a lot. As you can see, our DVD cover is missing. And as we find stuff like this, I always take pictures just to, number one, protect myself. This is a good friend, so I'm not too worried about that aspects of being held accountable for something missing. But if you're doing a new client, definitely take pictures of this. And you want to notate this stuff. That way they can't come back and say you broke something, you took something, or yada, yada, yada. Another thing that I did, and I haven't even opened this up like I said, it's missing the graphics card. And I'm a little concerned about that, and we're gonna make a phone call in a minute and find out what's going on with that. Bunch of USBs in the back, nothing too fancy. Power supply, and let's see, the case is a Antec case. It says Intel Core i7 and Alltech computer system. So there's the phone number if you guys want to call them and find out, alltech.com. But moving forward, so let's open this up. Wow, I've never seen one like this before. So taking a look at it, it looks like we have a Intel motherboard. It appears to be the DX58SO, so it's going to tell me this is Intel first gen. I don't know if you guys see this over here, and I'm probably making the thumbnail. It's got a cool skull on it. That's pretty nice. Now, doing some research, this motherboard was released back in 2008, and this motherboard, I believe, had support for up to 16 gigs of DDR3, so nothing too fancy. This motherboard's very different compared to most that I've seen. I mean, look how massive this little cooler over here is in this heatsink, and see if we get you guys some better pictures of it. The memory is actually up on top, which is a first. I've never seen this before. I never really messed with Intel first gen, so definitely a new one for me. We got a Western Digital Black 500 gig mechanical hard drive or DVD drive, and this power supply is a Antec EarthWatt 650 watt max. I've used a bunch of these Antec EarthWatt power supplies. They're actually pretty good and stable on this, so wonder if this works. We'll definitely have to look into that. Let's go ahead and take out our cooler, which is sort of loose. And just taking a rough look at it, let's wipe this thermal paste off. All right, it's not plaster, guys, in case you guys are wondering. Definitely not plaster. But definitely kind of weird texture, worn out for sure. And we got an i7-930. Okay, let's see what type of memory we got over here. We got 2 gigs of DDR3 1333. And another 2 gigs, so 4 gigs. Okay, nothing to write home about. And let's show you guys this cooler. This cooler is pretty massive. It's got the whole copper die, stock Intel cooler, but it's pretty heavy. And this is socket 1366, and this motherboard is crusty. And I just realized that there's a dead friend over here. Yeah, that's a dead roach. Great. So kind of looking at this a little more, and let's see if I get this in. I don't know if you guys can see that, but down there looks like we have 2 dead flies. Awesome. Little bit of roach fecal matter. Gross. So yeah, not off to a good start with this one, but it's okay. We can save it. Let me make a phone call. Let me see what they want to do with it and what happened. So all right, so in a nutshell, this is what happened. So this is Grandma's computer. She mostly uses it for the whole online game thing. Not the whole Fortnite or Steam or anything. Mostly for those poker games and card game type deals. Nothing intensive. She used it for a while. Then she said one day it stopped working. She called somebody to look it over. And then when she got it back, it just never worked right. And she could never figure out what was going on with it. Okay. So talking to the guy, he pretty much said that when he went to turn it on to look at it, the first thing he noticed that it would fire up, but he wouldn't get a video signal. He turned around back and he found the graphics card was missing. They believe that whoever looked at it stole the graphics card. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So pretty much what he's wanting me to do is, let's see if we could get it running. And if we're able to get it running, at least get it so it could run Windows 10. She could get online, check her emails, play a little the poker game, card games, or whatever type of game she plays. And that's about it. This ain't going to be no gamey rig by no means. But just for the sake of video, we might pop in a graphics card and see how this first gen still holds up years later. So what I think I want to do is because it's not clear how this thing was not turning on or what exactly happened as far as that. We're going to test this power supply. I showed this in another video. This thing is great. This will let you know if you have a dead short, and it's been very reliable in saving me from frying components. So let's plug this in. Let's find out if this power supply is still good before we put anything else and sacrifice a good graphics card, and then we'll know where to start. Now, against my better judgment, I probably should dust this out. I haven't seen anything moving in it, so that's kind of good. But typically I clean these first, but I mean, at this point, I really just want to see if this power supply works. All right, so let's plug that in here. Let's plug this Molex in, and let's get this CPU power one. Let's plug that in right there. All right, so that's ready to go. Let's get this thing some power. All right, let's see what happens. Hopefully no smoke action. All right, so the voltages look good. I don't see anything that's causing me any red flags, so I'm happy with that. So I think the next thing we're gonna do is let's go ahead, let's put some little thermal paste on it, put the memory back in, and let's see if this thing fires up. All right, let's kind of blow this thing out. Let's give it a quick and dirty cleaning, nothing too fancy. I probably counted like 6, maybe 7. I think this is number 7. That's the 7th fly that's actually flew out of there, of course with the assistance of my air duster. But yeah, I've never had flies inside of a computer, so definitely let me know if you guys ever ran into that one. All right, so a graphics card of choice. We're just gonna pop in this 1050 Ti. This is actually not what's gonna stay with this build. I think we'll probably find a W4100. Like I said, this is not going to be a gaming rig. I'm just doing this just so I could see how well this thing holds up. All right, everything looks plugged in. Just got our solid state drive just kind of hanging there. That's fine. And let's go ahead and press the power button. Man, I hope this is not a repeat of that Phantom one. Or maybe I got to hit this button. Yep, that'll do it. All right, let's try this again. All right, time to check some things out. All right, we got it to power up. See if we get a display or anything. So running a 1050 Ti, added some extra memory so we can have 16 gigs of RAM, and this is the i7 970, and also got a solid state. Now, I want to see how this thing performs. Of course, we're not going to keep all this stuff in here. This is just so we can kind of see how well this CPU holds up. And honestly, guys, I'm not liking what I'm seeing or experiencing. And here's what's going on. So I'm at 1080p, low settings, and I'm not even in a battle royale per se, and I'm just doing this one-handed. And yeah, we're at like 80, 90 frames per second, but the dips on this thing are just horrible. And I'm just talking about like complete drops to 10, 20 frames per second, and this is 1080p low. Now, if you look at it and you kind of see the stutters on it, we're at 100% CPU usage, and the GPU is only being used at maybe 30, 40%. So our CPU is our bottleneck for this 1050 Ti. So maybe this thing would run better with a GPU that could better complement it. So let's move on to another game. So here's a classic, CSGO, and I'm at 1080p medium settings, and I'm averaging about 40 to 50 frames per second. And well, I just died because I suck at this game, but surprisingly this game actually works really good with this. And yes, the CPU is being slightly bottlenecked, but I mean, this game still holds up really well, and I guess you could play it on a potato of a CPU setup. So let's take a look at one more. Grand Theft Auto 5. We're just running the benchmark test on it. It's just a lot easier to do it. 1080p low settings, and even though it's transitioning to the next scene, I mean, our averages are anywhere from 70 to 80 frames per second, occasional dips to 60, just depending on the scene that's going on. So definitely playable, but then again, this is also an older title. Definitely something to think about. So Intel i7 first gen, particularly this i7 930, I don't recommend them, you know, and here's why. If you're gonna find a system complete for about $200-300, even I've seen them for $400, yeah, people scam you on that. It's definitely not worth the money. Now, if you find this thrown out thrift store for about, you know, $20-30, absolutely pick it up, and you can have a good potato PC or just something to learn, a good Linux computer, which these things make real great. But the biggest issue that you walk into with this is the fact that the i7 first gen is a real heavy bottleneck. I mean, I'm using a 1050 Ti. Now, don't get me wrong, she ain't no slouch, but I mean, she's a budget-minded graphics card, and she's being bottlenecked by an i7 first gen, so definitely something to consider. And when I paired this graphics card with a second gen, we were able to get better performance and show that, well, this i7 first gen, yeah, she's showing her age on it. So to finish up this build, we're gonna take all this out, leave it with 4 gigs of RAM, put a solid state drive in there. I think I got a W4100 lying around, which those are like $20-30 graphics cards. And this is not a gaming computer. This is just for old Mima, just to kind of get on the old interweb, check her emails, play her little poker card games, and that's about it. And that should probably last her about another year or two before either one, my bet would be, the system just kind of craps out, or number two, new updates to Windows just make older hardware even harder to use. So guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see what we come up with next.